Is Antifa planning a siege at the U.S. Mexico border in El Paso in September? No, that's not true. While several left-wing groups have announced a call to action, gathering for border resistance in El Paso, Texas, starting on September 1, 2019, the organizers are Indigenous and QTPOC, queer, trans, people of color, with no indication of Antifa involvement. The story originated in a tweet from columnist Andy Go, who is known for covering Antifa protests, and has been repeated in articles on conservative websites, including an article published by conservativefiringline.com on July 30, 2019 titled, "Antifa Plans Border Siege in El Paso," which opened, quote, "Beginning on September 1, 2019, Antifa plans to hold a 10-day siege at the border in El Paso, Texas. Called the Border Resistance Convergence, they have plans for trainings and direct actions against border officials, according to the Daily Caller." End quote. Users on social media only saw this title, description and thumbnail. Quote, "Antifa plans border siege in El Paso." Conservative firing line. Antifa plans to have a 10-day siege of the southern border beginning on September 1 and going through September 10. "We'll see if it actually works." End quote. The tweet that began this false reporting came from Andy Go, described by BuzzFeed as a conservative media personality, posted on July 29, 2019. Quote, "Antifa is leading a border resistance militancy training tour that will converge on a 10-day siege in El Paso, Texas." The promotional image shows border enforcement officers being killed and AMP government property fired-bombed. Organizers asking for "white comrades" to pay for others. pic.twitter.com/ZWG7IMLMS, Andy Go, @Mirandingo, July 29, 2019. End quote. An article in the Daily Caller, which appeared to be the basis for the other story, took the fear-raising a step higher, suggesting the El Paso gathering would include violence. It is titled, "Report, Antifa Plans Terror Campaign and Siege of El Paso, Texas to Push Border Resistance." Quote, "The far-left Antifa movement is reportedly planning a terror campaign and siege of El Paso, Texas in an attempt to raise awareness of alleged abuses at the U.S. Mexico border." The so-called border resistance exercise involves a militancy training tour that will converge on a 10-day siege in El Paso, Texas, according to a tweet Monday from reporter Andy Go. End quote. Lead Stories reached out to Go for details about why he believes the border resistance gathering is led by Antifa, which is a movement with the stated goals of abolish capitalism and smash fascism. The website Go points to in his tweet, borderresistance.com, makes no mention of Antifa. We will update this article with his response when it is received. The website and Facebook page for the event lists these groups as organizers. Quote, "Contra Viento y Marea, Tornillo the Occupation, Hecate Society, Casa Carmelita, Food Not Walls and No Mas Muertes, No More Deaths." End quote. The organizers made it clear that anyone participating must be ready to follow a leadership made exclusively of Native Americans and people of color who are queer, trans. Quote, "When you come to this convergence you will be Antigua, Raramuri, Piro, Suma and Manso territory. This convergence is being run by Indigenous and AMP, QTPOC, queer, trans, people of color leadership and anyone who passively or aggressively disrespects that will be asked to leave." End quote. The organizers listed are not known for affiliation with Antifa, according to Brian Levin, the director of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University, San Bernardino. Quote, "I think what Mr. Go is doing is conflating these deep left groups with Antifa. Antifa does not appear to be a direct or primary sponsor, although they may be encouraging it secondarily on various websites and fragmented groups. While there have been a string of hard left and Antifa crimes, including threats against conservatives, we have not seen any homicides by Antifa in the last 2 years, although we believe violent activity by Antifa segments may increase if the political season coarsens, as it probably will. Violent Antifa slivers remains a threat, but the most ascendant movement, by far, are white nationalist far-right. But a rising tide would lift all extremists' ships." End quote. A Hecate Society spokesperson told Lead Stories, "We have no affiliation with Antifa, there is also no indication of a terror campaign. This is an example of the Hecate Society's activism and message. NewsGuard, a company that uses trained journalists to rank the reliability of websites, describes conservativefiringline.com as, quote, a hyperpartisan conservative news and opinion site that publishes conspiracy theories and does not run corrections. End quote.